King's Fall is the featured raid of the Taken King expansion in Destiny 1, brought over to Destiny 2 during the Season of Plunder in 2022. This raid has a lot of different mechanics between each encounter, but the overall difficulty is not too bad, making it more of an intermediate raid overall. For this video, I'll be covering both the basic mechanics of each encounter, as well as the strategies for completing each encounter challenge. So this video will have a little something for beginners and raid veterans looking for some extra loot. Feel free to use timestamps and chapters to view the sections most relevant to you. Without further ado, let's get started. There's only really one mechanic that is persistent throughout King's Fall, and that is special buffs called brands. Brands project a force field around the player wielding them, protecting players from hazards and allowing them to damage certain enemies. Brand buffs can be taken from both players and enemies using a separate buff called Brand Claimer. Upon loading into the raid, split into 2 teams of 3, one for each side of the room. Have one player on each team grab the orb and then dunk both into the same glowing pedestal. Continue this process, starting from further and further back until all 6 pedestals have been dunked on. Players not carrying orbs should focus on killing adds and shooting blights to open doors. Go through the portal to enter Oryx's throne world and begin the raid proper. You'll also get a free chest for your troubles. The first secret chest can be found near the end of the lengthy jumping puzzle before the first encounter. Ride the final ship towards the door, then jump to the left on this ramp. You may have to jump to this small ledge first based on your character class and jumping ability. Go up the ramp, then enter the door to find a chest overlooking the final area before the first encounter. The door only opens if people are standing on the 2 plates on either side, so be mindful of your teammates. The first encounter of the raid is the only encounter without a boss, so equip for ad clear and unstoppable champions. Like before, split into 2 teams of 3, and have one person on each team grab the brand buff to start the encounter. Players with the brand buff must stand under the death totems to prevent a wipe. Kill adds to gain stacks of Death Singer's power while keeping track of the timer on your brand buff. Call out intervals like 20, 15, and 10 and start counting down each second once it's low. Meanwhile, another player on each side should kill a Taken Wizard on the upper ledge, then kill a Taken Knight to pick up the Brand Claimer buff. Run into the corresponding room and take the brand from the other player when their timer gets low. The player who previously had brand must run to the middle and stand on the center plate, depositing their Death Singer's power stacks. Meanwhile, the final player on each side should already be getting ready to get Brand Claimer for themselves. Once all your Death Singer's power stacks are gone, then you can prepare to get Brand Claimer yourself. Think of it like a constant relay on each side. As long as you keep up pace and let the brand players kill most of the adds, you'll get through this encounter in no time. Once enough Death Singer's power stacks have been deposited, the encounter will end. Collect your rewards from the chest that spawns on the plate. The challenge for this encounter is that players may not wield the brand buff on the same side twice in a row. In other words, the encounter functions mostly the same, but with one key difference. When you return to the middle after having brand and dunking your Death Singer's power stacks, you must hop up to the opposite ledge and get that Brand Claimer. Then go into the room opposite of where you were last time and claim that brand. This relay pattern should look more like this, similar to an infinity. Do this and you'll complete this challenge with no issues. The second encounter is in the very next room. First, take a look at the map. There are 3 plates, each corresponding to a different pillar around the middle of the room. Split into 3 teams of 2, one for each plate. Designate one player on each team to be a reader. Equip for DPS, then stand on all 3 plates to start the encounter. To start, simply kill enemies, particularly the wizards and knights. Once all the knights are killed, the glyph reading sequence will begin. The middle plate reader should step on their plate to see which plate is first. On the backsides of each pillar is a stone that glows white when it is their turn. If the middle reader cannot see any side glowing, then they are the starting plate. Step off, then let the corresponding reader step on the real first plate. They will call out which plate is next. Once the third reader steps on their plate, they will immediately gain the brand buff. Call out every single second remaining on the brand buff from the beginning. Meet up for DPS on the ledge to the right of the Warpriest. Damage can only be dealt while standing inside the bubble of the brand player. Meanwhile, have one player from each of the first 2 plates stay behind and wait for a Taken Knight to spawn. Kill the knights to gain the Brand Claimer buff. One player should use Brand Claimer to take brand when the timer is fairly low, then continue counting down the timer, which will be shorter than the first. The last person will claim brand, counting down an even shorter timer. When the third timer is low, everyone should group up behind one of the pillars to avoid a massive damage wave. Once the wave is done, any pillars that players were hiding behind will crumble, so it's important to all use one at a time. Repeat this process for future rounds, the only difference being that missing pillars will have a streak of red energy when it is their turn, rather than a glowing stone. If you need to hide behind the left pillar, do DPS on the left side to make traversal easier. Otherwise, repeat this process until you either run out of pillars to hide behind, or defeat the boss to finish the encounter. Collect your rewards from the chest that spawns nearby. The challenge for this encounter is that players must take the brand buff within 3 seconds of acquiring Brand Claimer. This challenge is easily the hardest in the entire raid and requires a lot of coordination. Deal DPS from the pit around the middle pillar. The taken knights will spawn one at a time, so move the entire group closer to the side that has the first knight. Then move back over to the other side for the other knight. Delay picking up Brand Claimer until the timer is sufficiently low to allow maximum time for DPS while still fulfilling the challenge. I'm not gonna lie, this challenge can be pretty annoying. The best I can say is just be patient and prepare for a lot of failures. The second secret chest can be found within Golgoroth's cellar. Throughout the maze are 5 plates which must be stepped on in the correct order to spawn a chest near the center. Collect your rewards from the chest, then continue down to the middle to the next area. This encounter room is pretty small, no map required. Assign 4 players to be gunners that equip for sustained DPS, while the other 2 players are on gaze duty. If you're on gaze duty, I recommend equipping a powerful burst precision weapon such as Izanagi's Burden or any high damage linear fusion rifle. Shoot the glowing sack near the ceiling to start the encounter. Golgoroth will emerge, ignore him for now. Hide from his beam if he targets you. Kill ads near the back of the room, especially the wizards. Eventually, another sack will appear near the front of the room. Once players are ready, shoot the sack down to create a pool of light in the pit. Gunners must jump into the pit and stand inside the pool to deal damage to Golgoroth. Meanwhile, a gaze player should shoot the opening on Golgoroth's back to take his gaze, directing his full attention towards them. Like the previous encounter, count down the timer every second from the beginning, and position yourself in such a way that Golgoroth is facing towards the gunners. When the timer gets low, the other gaze players should shoot Golgoroth's back to take gaze for themselves, while the gunners should look to shoot the next sack and create a new pool of light. Repeat this process, passing gaze back and forth and shooting down the sacks until Golgoroth gets tired, signifying the end of DPS. If gaze is lost for any reason during that process, DPS will immediately end and the remaining sacks will fill up runes on the pillar at the back. If these runes fill up completely, the fire team will wipe. Also, during this process, any players in the pit have a chance of gaining the overflowing light debuff. Players with this debuff must move away from the other players and stand near Golgoroth. Otherwise, there is a significant chance of several players dying to an explosion. Repeat the entire process until Golgoroth dies to clear the encounter. Collect your rewards from the chest at the back of the pit. The challenge for this encounter is that gaze can only be taken while the current gaze player is standing in the pool of light. The encounter mostly functions identically, with the only difference being that the player with gaze should jump into the pool when they have a few seconds left before the other player takes it. Healing grenades or rifts may be necessary to mitigate damage from Golgoroth firing at the group. Keep up this pattern of jumping into the pool at the last second to complete the challenge. The final secret chest can be found during the jumping puzzle with the wall pushers. Use your ghost to reveal hidden platforms leading up to a secret room. At the back of the room is a secret chest. Go back out and resume the jumping puzzle into the final area. This encounter more or less functions as a tutorial for the next one, so many mechanics will be very similar if not the same. Looking at the map, there are 4 plates which can be called out as L1, L2, R1, and R2. Assign 1 player to each plate, with the remaining players serving as floaters. There are 2 mini-boss wizards that must be defeated to clear the encounter, so equip for DPS. Rocket launcher builds with Galahorn tend to be popular for this encounter. Shoot at the wizards or the knight to begin the encounter. The plate with the knight on it will be glowing, so that player should step on it. A taken orb will appear high in the air above one of the other plates. Call out which plate it is so that that player can stand on it. Meanwhile, a random player will become torn between dimensions. The torn player should head to the first plate that was glowing. Once both plates are being stood on, several platforms will appear that only the torn player can stand on. Jump up the platforms and run into the orb at the top to get a piece of Brand Claimer. Once the Brand Claimer piece is acquired, the torn player will no longer be torn and players can step off the plates. Repeat this process of standing on the correct plates and having the torn player jump up the platforms for 3 total cycles. On the 3rd cycle, the torn player will have to interact with the orb to acquire the actual Brand Claimer buff. Using Brand Claimer, jump to the wizard that is shooting at players and steal their brand buff. All players stand on the small ledge across from the shieldless wizard and deal DPS until the timer runs out, but do not kill the wizard. Stay in the brand bubble until the wave of fire goes away. The entire process now repeats, the only difference being that the opposite wizard will be the one to steal the brand from. Once one wizard is dead, the other wizard must be killed on the very next round or the fire team will wipe. This is why it is recommended to not kill the first wizard on the first round, just to give some leeway for the next round. Once both wizards are dead, the encounter is complete. Collect your rewards from the chest near where you entered the encounter. The challenge for this encounter is that players cannot step on the same plate twice within a damage cycle. In other words, once you step on a plate, you cannot step on that plate ever again until after DPS ends. This requires 2 things. 1. Once you step on a plate, do not step off for any reason until the torn player gets the piece of Brand Claimer. 2. After each piece of Brand Claimer, players assigned to plates should rotate clockwise to ensure that they cannot step on the same plate again. Torn players are not counted for this challenge, so you don't have to worry about that. Floaters that may have to fill in should remember which plates they've been on each cycle. Do this and you'll complete this challenge fairly easily. This encounter is the final boss, so equip for heavy precision damage. Just like before, assign 4 players to each of the 4 plates, as well as 2 floaters. Approach the glowing orb at the back to summon Oryx and begin the encounter. Oryx will eventually move to a specific plate and slam his fist, initiating the actual mechanics cycle. The plate that Oryx slammed will start glowing, with the mechanics functioning identically to the previous encounter. Once the torn player gets the piece of Brand Claimer, step off the plates and wait for the next starting plate to begin glowing. While that is happening, a Light Eater Ogre will spawn next to each plate. Kill the ogres as soon as possible. They will drop bombs that resemble taken blights. Do not go inside the bubble around those blights for now. Additionally, Light Eater Knights will spawn diagonally away from the ogres. Kill them to prevent them from reaching the bombs and detonating them prematurely. Once the 3rd piece is grabbed and Brand Claimer is acquired, all plate players, or floaters if necessary, should stand just outside of their bombs. The player with Brand Claimer will take Brand from a knight in the center. As soon as Oryx calls upon the darkness, step into the bombs. Wait for a moment. Once you see your name on the left and confirm that you've detonated a bomb, run to the center inside the brand bubble. Once the bombs detonate, Oryx will be vulnerable to damage. Shoot at him wherever he is until his chest closes and he moves back to the middle. Oryx will then perform one of 2 tricks. One is Domain Expansion, where players will be randomly teleported into a pocket dimension where they must defeat a copy of Oryx before all players are teleported in. Otherwise, the fire team will wipe. The other is Bombs, where players will be pursued by lingering explosions. Keep moving constantly, but kill the knight standing on the plates to end the effect. Once the trick is done, the full mechanics cycle restarts. Repeat the entire process again until Oryx reaches final stand. For final stand, Oryx will move to the middle where he was summoned, and 2 more ogres will spawn near L2 and R2. Detonate those bombs just like before, and then damage Oryx until he is finally vanquished and the raid is complete. Collect your rewards from the chest at the very back of the area overlooking Oryx. The challenge for this encounter is similar to the previous, being that players cannot kill the same Light Eater Ogre or Knight twice throughout the encounter. Assuming 2 damage phases, the easiest way to do this challenge is to swap the 1s and 2s after DPS, including the floaters. So if you were at L1 first, now you'd be at L2, and vice versa. For final stand, simply have one of the L and R pairs swap sides, as those ogres do count. Of course, if you can 1-phase Oryx, that also works. Either way, do this and you'll easily complete the challenge. After the introductory encounter, but before going through the portal, head under this platform. There will be 3 symbols displayed. There are 9 symbols like these hidden throughout the raid. Find and activate the correct 3 by shooting them to complete the Deepsight Puzzle, spawning an additional chest after Oryx that gives a guaranteed red border weapon. If you accidentally shoot an incorrect one, don't worry, just shoot it again to deactivate it. Regrettably, as there are so many symbols, I do not have footage of where they all are. I'd recommend looking up another guide to see where they all are if you're curious. Thanks for watching. If this guide helped you, please leave a like, and if you have any comments or concerns, don't be afraid to leave a comment. I'm Nova Star Kyle, and I'll see you next time.